All right, today I want to welcome to the Edge of Success podcast both Michael Rosa and Jared Black. And I'm really glad to have these two men with me today. What we're going to do is go around and introduce ourselves. So I'm going to start with Michael. Michael, if you could give us a couple minutes or so, a little bit about your background, things you've done, a little bit about what you're doing now, and then we'll have Jared do it after that.
Excellent. Well, Dave, thanks for having me here. It's wonderful to be with you. You and I have had some spirited and really great conversations about business and scaling and exiting and so forth. So really, really happy to share some thoughts with you today and be part of it. So thanks for having me. I'm Michael Rosa. I'm the CEO and founder of MJR Business Advisors. My background is, I would say, four different industries. I've built and scaled businesses for about 4 decades. I've owned three of my own companies and I've run another. The areas of my expertise have been in retail, in restaurant, hospitality, real estate, and then most recently in transportation logistics. So I've been CEO, founder a few times, also been a chief operating officer as well. And basically my scope is businesses are in size of $20 million in revenue. And my chief function there was always as an operator with a financial mind as well. So I've also been able to start businesses, then grow them through operations, and then make sure they're financially sound, building great balance sheets, P&Ls, and making sure I had money for growth. I'm now currently located in Florida, and I've been a business coach and strategist. My business works with small to medium-sized businesses, say 1 to 10 million. I love the restaurant space and I love the retail space because I spent many years doing that. And basically, we look for operational excellence. I'm a profit acceleration specialist where I like to look into each business, help businesses find profits, and then also help them if they have a mindset of growth, or if they have a mindset to scale and exit, then I get you involved, Dave. So that's what I've been doing.
Well, thanks, Michael. Just before we move on to Jared, out of all the things you've done, is there one specific area that you really have enjoyed the most?
Wow, that's a good question. I think I enjoyed the restaurant business for the speed and the agility that I had to have and be able to be as flexible as I possibly could with my operations and schedules. Secondly, I would say the transportation industry because I love cars, I love vehicles, anything that's got tires on it, I'm in. And so I enjoyed that for the excitement of that as well.
Okay, that's kind of interesting. Thanks for sharing a little bit, Michael. Jared, want to share a little bit about your background?
Yeah, sure. Again, thanks for having me. Excited to be here. Really excited to get into some good conversation. My name is Jared Black. I'm founder and CEO of New Vine Employment Group. In short, I'm a professional recruiter. Growth companies typically turn to me when they have very hard to fill roles or critical roles within their business that they need to have filled immediately, usually within a matter of days or weeks, not months. Since I've started New Vine Employment Group, I've hired more than 10,000 employees, partnered with more than 300 businesses. We've won multiple awards for our staffing service and our innovation in that regard. I'm a fourth generation entrepreneur. So entrepreneurship is definitely something I grew up knowing and not knowing really any other path, at least not being comfortable in any other path, I should say. I love to work with business owners. I love to work with founders. I love solving complex problems and their biggest pain points. I think one of my strongest suits is definitely being able to understand the specific needs of a specific business and tie that to the strategic vision of a founder, package it up nicely, go out to the market and communicate that to the talent out there. We are working on continuously build Vine, which is our newest product. It's an AI product. It's a platform that empowers companies to be able to leverage our AI at scale to discover and hire hard to find talent. And my vision is pretty much very simple. I want to help growth focused companies. I want to help them attract to hire the best talent in the market. And my YouTube channel is dedicated to doing that. And you can find a lot of good resources there pretty quickly.
Well, great. I'll just share briefly here. Dave Pennington, Penn Coaching Consulting. I've had this company about 10 years now. I call it my third career. I started in ministry, believe it or not, mostly larger scale that would be a good sized congregation with private schools. So might have 80 to 100 employees. I've done a lot of hiring through the years, a lot of insurance stuff, operational stuff. I have had a fairly amount a background in private education. I think I've been a head of school of 5 or 6 schools, executive director of a state group with 37 schools in it, president of a state group on a national board, adjunct prof. So a lot in private education. And then about 10 years ago, I started Penn Coaching Consulting and started primarily in the leadership development space. Started to try to help business owners. It almost always came back to a leadership issue. And, there was something that they needed help with. And then I kind of iterated and have focused on scaling, and I still do both of these. I primarily do that through what I call organizational structure. I find most business owners are trying to do too many things and often trying to do the wrong things. They're working in their weaknesses or where they're sort of mediocre versus where they're really strong. So I try to get them aligned properly so that they're working in their strengths about 80% of the time, then help them build what I call a complementary dream team, where they have strengths in areas where the business owner is weak, and then really learn how to develop leaders within the organization. I find a lot of times we sort of expect people to develop themselves, when in reality you have to kind of lean in and help people grow and help develop people. Then about a year and a half ago, got interested in valuations and acquisition. And so I am now focusing on helping small to mid-sized business owners exit their company. You can pass it on to your kids. You can become a silent owner. You can sell it outright. You can sell it to your employees. There's all kinds of ways to exit. But I bumped into something called the silver tsunami, which is the idea that the boomers are aging out and a lot of them don't have an exit plan. And they estimate somewhere around $10 trillion with a T is going to change hands in the next 3 to 5 years. And most people have no idea. They're not sure what their company's worth. And they're also not even really sure they can sell their company. So that's kind of the focus and the space that I'm focusing in right now. I just want to share a little bit about this particular slide. These are the 8 metrics that the assessment that I make available to companies. They can take this assessment. It will not only give them a value of their company, a range with a mean, but it also is based upon these 8 metrics, and it gives you a score of 0 to 100 in each of these areas. So it really helps you know where you're strong and frankly know where you're a little weak and then what you need to focus on if you really want to improve the value of your company. And so I'm going to just touch on each one of them. Financial performance, obviously we're talking about basically revenue and profit there. As both of you guys know, sometimes you have a lot of revenue, but you may not have that much profit. And because you have high expenses. So understanding all that and making sure that's in order. Monopoly control has to do with the idea of how do you differentiate yourself from your competition. I know, Jared, when we talked some before, you have some ways that you have sought to differentiate yourself and make yourself more valuable as a company so people come to you. The Switzerland structure really has to do with how dependent you are either upon one employee. Sometimes we have one employee we're really dependent upon, or one customer. You might have one customer that could represent 40, 50% of your income. Obviously, if you lose that customer, you're in trouble. Or one supplier, depending on what kind of work you're in. So that's important. The valuation teeter-totter has to do really with cash flow. You've got cash coming in, cash going out. Sometimes they align properly. Most of the time, they really don't. And you're trying to juggle it so you can make payroll and all the other kind of thing you need to do. Recurring revenue is pretty obvious. If you have potential to have sort of like Netflix, where you have a steady amount of money coming in each month for a service you provide, that can really position you, help your cash flow, make your company more valuable. Growth potential is not only the likelihood of growth, but what might be the rate of that growth. And then customer satisfaction has to do with how likely your customers are to come back to you for a future service or to refer you to people they know because they've just been pleased with the way that you've done business with them. The one I want to talk about today briefly, just for a few minutes, is the last one, which is hub and spoke. And what hub and spoke has to do with how dependent your business is upon you. What we found is that the more your business is dependent upon you, the value goes down substantially and the attractive or the sellability goes down because no business owner or no business buyer wants to buy a business that's kind of completely dependent or almost totally dependent upon the seller. When the owner goes away, they're thinking maybe the customers or the clients will go away. And often you wind up having kind of a buyout where, hey, I want to buy your business, but I'm not going to give you full value for it because it's too dependent upon you. And I'm a little nervous about that. And I need you to stick around for a couple of years. And most business owners, they don't want to do that. You think about it, they're the owner of the company. They've run it for 25, 30 years maybe. And then now they're reduced to an employee of a new owner who's going to come in, probably going to change a bunch of things. And then all the employees are going to start to come to him because he's there and he knows them. And it just winds up being a big mess. And they'd rather just move on for the most part. So sometimes ask me if there was one thing to really prepare your business and help your business to both scale and or position yourself to sell, what would be the one area? If I were to choose one out of all of these, it would be hub and spoke because it's the hub, no pun intended. It's kind of the core of your business. And if it's too dependent upon you and you've got to touch everything, then the value is going to go down and the attractability or the attractiveness is going to go down as well. And I think we've probably all seen this. And frankly, we probably all have done this, maybe at least in the past or maybe even now. I don't know how you have found it. I know both of you have been in business for a while, but I usually find that there are some reasons why some, not all, but some business owners tend to hold on to everything. Sometimes they hold on to it maybe because they were burned in the past. They had an employee that burned them, and I'm not about to put myself in a vulnerable position again. Sometimes it's insecurity. They like being the center of things and they want to hold on to everything. They like the fact that everything's coming to their desk. It makes them feel needed and appreciated and valued. Sometimes it may be pride. I'm really good at what I do. No one can quite do it like I can do it. So there's a lot of different reasons that we tend to become the hub of the business. And I'm interested for both of you to share a little bit about your own experiences or other people with whom you worked, and you've seen this hub and spoke kind of be an issue within the business and how it's really kind of hurt things. So with that as a little bit of an introduction, and I'm just interested in input, and I'll go back to Michael first. What's been your experiences with this concept of hub and spoke? You've worked for other owners. Have you ever bumped into this, I'll say, challenge? And what's been your experience or things maybe you'd like to share with us about that?
Dave, I'm going to say, wow, we could spend hours on this particular thing. So I could understand why you chose that to be the most important one. And I would have to say the second one will be the financial thing, and we'll talk about that another day, right? So the hub and spoke for me is, as you stated, is a critical point, especially if you've got the silver tsunami, you've got people that have either generational businesses or businesses that they plan to exit at some point. I have had firsthand information and experience with all of these different ways. Immediately, I think of the solopreneur. I think of the service provider. He might have an HVAC business. He might be a landscaper. He might be somebody who works for himself. Full service industry is a good one as that. I've seen some of that in that industry as well, where they are the business. So if they take a vacation and they take a step back, they're away from that business essentially just stops. Maybe the revenue stops with that. So that's where that business hinges on. And that type of business, that has to be sold to another business to be gobbled up by another person or team that can handle that business. Hub and spoke as it relates to the bottleneck. So I was in my recent company, running that company. There was a CEO involved. I came in and then became the CEO of the company, and then quickly determined that the CEO was the bottleneck of the company. And that if the decisions weren't being made by him, decisions weren't made by anybody. And then, God forbid, if he went on vacation, things just came to a halt. And this is not a small company, it's a $30 million company. So you just can't have that type of a situation in that type of company. So my goal there was to, as the chief operating officer, was to assume the reins, assume the decision making, and make sure that while the CEO was gone, that decisions were being made with the mentality of the CEO, and that things could keep going, so business operations didn't cease, and revenue was still streaming, and everybody was in operational step, if you will. Then on the other company, when you have a multiple unit, like I was a CEO of a multi-unit situation, that was about building a team, right? And that was what you were talking about. So I had to be sure that I was building a team, not only for the single units, but my mentality was always to build a team, build a bench. So when I did want to scale, did want to grow, that I had people on that bench that were ready to go into situations that already had the same culture and the same mentality of myself and the company, so we can move forward in the growth stage. So it's a huge, huge thing.
Did you find any resistance in some of the companies that you helped run from the owner in terms of, I'll call it letting go, releasing some of the authority and the decision-making power and that kind of thing?
Absolutely. And I can speak for myself because I am a CEO owner. We are control freaks in some ways. Okay. And then really the thing that really shows our experience and our growth, if you will, personal growth, is when we learn how to release and let someone else make the decisions and let somebody else do some of the talking. But I've run into a couple of situations where the CEO just would not let go. And that really does stifle the growth, and it stunts the business because you're stopped at that spot, right? And I'm sure you gentlemen in the room will agree. Sometimes it's best to surround yourself with people that are smarter. And being the smartest guy in the room is not the way to grow a business. I've always grown my businesses by hiring people that were smarter than me in those particular businesses. I could take on the risk and I could take on the general operations of it all, but I wanted people that are in the best place they could possibly be.
You might find this interesting, but I always tell business owners, look, if you have competent people on your team and you don't empower them to do their job, they're going to leave you.
Yeah.
Okay. because number one, they're good at what they do, and number two, they can leave you.
Right.
If you have people that are not that competent, they're very happy for you to take the responsibility, and they want to bring you every problem because they don't want any responsibility, and they're going to stay with you. And so if you're not careful, you can set yourself up where the people that could help you are leaving your company, and the people that can't help you are staying in your company, and everything just caps out at that point.
I call that the ignorance is bliss camp. Those are the people who are like, they're just happy. They're just going along with it. Like, hey, you want to do the work? Do the work. I'm still here getting
Just
paid.
send me my check.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
All right. Shifting here a little bit, Jared, what about you? What have been your experiences? I know you probably bump into all kinds of business owners in your line of work.
You basically described one of my favorite books, Built to Sell. So I think every entrepreneur needs to read it, especially if you're a small business owner. I think I'm guilty of it as well. I think almost everyone goes through this phase at one point and they realize what kind of business do they want long term. And I fight with this still. Like, do I want a lifestyle business or do I want to scale it to something big? And so I always have these two emotional pulls on my side. But what I typically see, entrepreneurs are usually made up of the same core DNA. They're usually not really good rule followers, or they're not confined to a specific box. They like to do it their way. Even if it's the longer, harder way, they like to do it their way. And most businesses never really graduate outside that point because they can't figure out the processes they put into place to allow people to either replicate their methodology or dump their knowledge base into something else. The person who has the specialty, the experience, they become the business, and then nothing can happen without them. If they go away from the business, they step away for a vacation or anything, everything stops. So most never really get to a point where they can create the processes that allow them to function, allow the business to function without them. And I see that very often. When I meet a CEO or a founder who tells me these types of challenges, one of the first things I ask them if they have an EA or a chief of staff. Almost always it's a no, or they have like a team of admin people who are doing like ad hoc things at random tasks here and there, and it's never consistent. So I always encourage them, hey, explore an EA, get a really good EA that'll take 75% of these admin tasks off your plate, your to-do list. Then we're going to have them mind your calendar. So there's no interruptions, there's no disruptions. You're going to be focused on what you are built to do, whether it's sales, whether it's growth, whether it's planning, what I call blue skies, whatever those tasks are that are really beneficial to you in the business. That's what you should be focused on doing. And so just bringing that EA right out of the gate, it provides so much breathing room for them. And then from there, I think they can focus on what's most impactful, whether it's bringing on a sales team, whether it's bringing on a delivery team, whatever the case may be. But I think it's usually attached to founders are usually made up of the same DNA. They never really figure out what's the right process or way to get the knowledge base out of their head and share it amongst the team, and then creating a reoccurring model.
I found that founders typically assume a lot. They assume that everything that's between this year and this year that their whole team knows and understands, which is not usually the case. Jared, out of curiosity, is there one kind of theme that you've bumped into that you think causes founders or owners to want to hold on to everything?
People feel that they can do the work better than anyone else. But I always tell my clients, like, if you can get someone to do it 70% as good as you, 65% as good as you, that's a win. Take that win.
Yeah. Sometimes I make the difference between addition and multiplication.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm doing it all, I can add one, then I can add one more, and then I can add one more. Eventually, I'm going to reach a saturation point where I'm like this.
Mm-hmm.
I can't add anymore. Okay.
Right.
It means I can't grow anymore. But if I can get the right people in place, I move from addition to multiplication. And maybe I can do it better, at least 2 or 3 areas better than some of the others ones can. But now I've got 3 or 4 people who are doing things. And even like you mentioned, if they do it at 75% of value, I mean, I'm still in multiplication versus addition, and trying to help them see a different perspective, because sometimes it's that paradigm shift in their head that has to take place first before they're ever really willing to consider repositioning and realigning. So
one of the other words I could probably use is ego, okay? And I would be susceptible to that as well. When I'm working with some people in venture capital, for instance, you've got the founders that bring their products and services to market, and their egos are way, way behind that. And then sometimes they don't have the market for it. That's a little sidebar. It's a good point, Dave. Addition, multiplication. Sometimes you do have to step back, you got to let go. So great is the enemy of good sometimes. Sometimes you've got to be able to train some people the best you can, trust that you made decisions in the people that are in the right seats, and then give them the bandwidth and give them the ability to make decisions. Even if they mess up a little bit, you got to give them that bandwidth so they'll grow, and then you can grow in the meantime, right? If I would have trying to go from 1 restaurant to 2 to ultimately 5, if I would have just said, well, I'm the smartest guy in the room and I know everything and I'm not going to let anybody grow and I'm not going to advance anybody, then I would have only had one restaurant. But being able to multiply the restaurants was basically me growing up.
I think owners can assume that means I'm just turning everything over and hoping it works out, but that's not really the case. You have a range of authority that they can make decisions in on their own without having to run everything by you. That can include authority and even financially. You can have some parameters. I think really putting some good metrics in place where the employee himself can measure whether he's really accomplishing what he needs to, and then you have a way of evaluating whether he's accomplishing what he needs to do to be successful. So it's not like you're just completely turning everything loose and hoping it works out, but it's really advantageous when you can begin to push some things away, and particularly if those people have competencies that are really strong in areas where you're maybe not as strong. I had a client a while back. He owned a small computer service company. And so I said, hey, tell me a little bit about your company. And he started chatting. I said, you kind of have business development or sales and you have operations. Which one are you? He says, oh, I'm sales. Without any question, I'm sales. And then he says, I close like 80% of everybody I talk to. And I was like, wow, 80% close ratio. That's pretty good. And so I said, what about the operations thing? He says, no, I'm horrible at it. I hate it. I'm terrible. So I said, all right, be honest right now in your company. How much time, energy, and focus are you putting toward sales versus operation? To my surprise, he says, I'm 85% operations and 15% sales. And I'm like, I'm blown away. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I
It's
said,
upside down.
yeah, you hate operations and you love sales and you're 85% operations. So I just paused and I said, well, how's that working for you? Literally his head dropped. He says, it's not. Right now, I hate my business. I hate my life. I'm not sure how much longer I can continue doing this. So I said, well, what would happen if we could get you an operational guy who could handle, he probably wouldn't handle all of it, but he could handle at least 80% of it. You'd still have to do maybe 10 or 20% because you're the owner, but you can handle that. But we got you out of operations and back into sales. And I said, what would that do for your business? He paused. He thought about it. He said, if I did that, he says, I'd double my company in 18 months. Long story made short, he got his operational guy. He got back into sales. He got into some government contracts and his company just took off, you know. So that was a perfect example to me of a guy who was just misaligned and didn't have the help that he needed. And it really was limiting his business for sure.
That's an aha moment, David. An aha moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think about businesses reaching certain tiers. Let's say a solopreneur starts their business right out of the gate, they have massive success. And then they get to a certain level where they're like, okay, I need to bring on this person, bring on that person. But like you said, they don't really let go. They just bring on more people. And just like you mentioned, this person who is really good at sales, but found themselves in an operational setting, it's because they're trying to do everything. And they got themselves to a tier where they know they need to take on the team. They know that they need to delegate a bit. But they just weren't doing it and they weren't putting the right people in the right place. So I feel like there's levels to that. It's always a continuous growth ladder. And no matter where you are in your journey, whether you have 2 people or 200 or 2,000 people, there are levels and you kind of have to learn, okay, what level am I at? And how do I get out of this little dependency that I'm in right now?
Yeah. In fact, sometimes the way I word it is when your company grows, as a leader, you need to continue growing. I see a lot of leaders who stop
100%.
growing. What they did to start it up and get it to the level where it is now works really well if that's where they want to stay. But if they want to go beyond that, they have to grow as a leader and their role begins to change.
Yeah.
And they have to know what they like doing, what they're good at doing, and then what they need to farm out and that ability to let go. So the continued growth of the leader along with the company, I think, is super critical if you really want to scale and grow.
Agreed.
I just want to circle back to a couple of key points that you made, David. Delegation, huge. I call it the guided tour. So that person in charge needs to take a guided tour to what the responsibilities are and making sure that they're properly delegated and allow people to make mistakes, make small ones, okay? And then what's the reaction of the founder, the owner, when things do happen like that? What's the reaction and how can you maximize the mistake to make it better next time and to help that person grow? Also, what you said about addition and multiplication, especially when it comes to founders that have big plans. They start small, but they have big plans. There's no possible way that they're going to get into their growth stages unless they do understand that they don't have all the answers. They need to surround themselves with people around them that can help them grow that vision and get to where they want to be. So those are some big takeaways there. And lastly, David, that aha moment you had with that founder, that was a huge, huge win for him and for you to be able to recognize that. And that's one of the things we do as leaders, we try and dig down to get to the core values of the business, the core situations and operations of the business. And then from there, at that point, it was a financial discovery, if you will. Okay, 85% of my business is coming from me, but I spend 85% of my business on operations. That's not going to math out, right? So
Yep.
great stuff you brought up, David.
So, all right. Any other thoughts here, Jared, before we wind up here? Any moments or things that you think about as you help business owners, or maybe even for your own company?
I have found that any problem that you run into, somebody has already figured out the solution. Read. But we're in a golden age now. You can take that book, drop it into AI, say, give me the blueprint to get out of this problem using this principle, this story, this example. Basically, any problem that I've ever run into, somebody's already got the answer. So you can find it.
Sometimes you can determine what you need to do to get out of the problem, but sometimes the hard thing is just to actually do, execute on things.
I'm very big on Claude these days. I no longer even talk to ChatGPT, but Claude holds me accountable. I'll tell you, like if I go in there, I try to get a ad hoc project and going in Claude and say, wait a second, you didn't never finish this thing. And I was like, oh, okay, you're right. Let me come back to earth here and let me finish this.
That's good.
So
yeah, well, that's good. Yeah. The little link to the quiz that I've created, it basically is based upon these 8 metrics. It takes about 2 minutes to do it if you have interest, no pressure. But it'll give them some idea of what they need to work on and improve and that kind of thing. One other thing I'll make just available either to you, both of you, or people is I have a evaluation assessment. By the way, you mentioned Built to Sell. That's actually the company I'm certified with that I can make available to people, business owners, that will give them an understanding of the value of their company, kind of a range and a mean. And it's based upon these 8 metrics. One of the reports I really like is really slick. It will give you a report. Up at the top, it kind of tells you how much your company's worth. And then it has these 8 metrics and it has little buttons. It scores you from 0 to 100 in each of these areas. And literally you can touch the button and slide it up. But so in each of those areas, you can touch the button, slide up and say, oh, if I did that, if I improved there, it would be worth this. So it's kind of a slick report and really, really valuable, I think, to business owners. So if you know of someone to be interested, I'd be glad to make that available to them. So.
it'd be so great if you had the capability to get a snapshot, like a picture of the person completing the assessment once that result came, because I'm guessing most people will be shocked by their valuation. But I mean, everyone thinks their business is worth more than it really is. So when that number pops up, they're like this, and then you get a snapshot automatically.
Well, one of the things I've been emphasizing to sellers is, look, when you get ready to sell your company, you have to change hats. You can't think like a seller. You got to think like a buyer.
Yeah.
And when you're buying something, you look at it very differently from how you're selling it. When you're selling, you think, man, look what I accomplished. Look what I did. We have this coming in. We really have it, our act together. But that's not the way the buyer looks at it. He's looking at all these things that we've talked about and more if he's really interested. I really appreciate the two of you joining. I think it's been very helpful. And I look forward to staying in contact with both of you and hope the two of you will connect as well, because I think it can be helpful. But thanks. You're really a great deal. I really appreciate you being on here.